Tears, tiny drops that carry oceans of meaning. We shed them when we're heartbroken, when we laugh until it hurts, when we lose someone we love, or when something beautiful takes our breath away. They're one of the few things that unite every human on Earth, yet we rarely stop to ask why they exist at all. We know why we sweat, why we bleed, why we breathe, but crying? What possible purpose does that serve? Why did evolution, so ruthlessly efficient, keep something so vulnerable, so messy, so human? Because crying isn't weakness. It's communication, it's chemistry, it's evolution's way of saying you're still alive. Today we'll explore what makes crying such a powerful part of being human, from the biology of tears to the emotional release they bring, to the secret ways they connect us to one another. By the end of this video, you might never look at tears the same way again. The first language we ever spoke. Before we ever learn words, we learn tears. A baby's first act in this world is to cry, a sound so universal it crosses all cultures, languages, and time. That cry isn't just noise. It's communication perfected by nature. To a parent, it's impossible to ignore. The pitch, the rhythm, the urgency, all designed to pierce through fatigue and trigger a deep biological response. Neuroscientists have found that hearing a baby cry activates parts of the brain linked to empathy and protection. Even strangers, childless adults, feel an instinctive pull. Crying from the very start is our lifeline, a signal that says, I'm here. I need you. But as we grow older, tears evolve. They stop being about survival and start being about emotion. When words fail, tears remain. The biology of a breakdown. To understand crying, we have to look closer. Literally, every tear that falls from your eye carries a microscopic story. Under a microscope, emotional tears look different from all others. Crystalline patterns, fractal-like structures that almost resemble fingerprints. And every type of tear tells a different story. Basal tears are the constant silent protectors, keeping our eyes hydrated and healthy. Reflex tears spring to life when we slice onions or face irritants, purely defensive. Emotional tears, though, are entirely unique. They contain higher levels of stress hormones like cortisol and natural painkillers like leucine and kephalin. When we cry emotionally, we're not just expressing pain, we're releasing it. Our bodies are literally purging chemical stress through salt water. That's why after crying, many people describe feeling lighter or emptied out. It's not just emotional relief, it's biological detox. In a world that tells us to suppress emotion, tears are nature's quiet rebellion. The emotional chemistry of tears. Crying changes your brain's chemistry. When you cry, the limbic system, the part responsible for emotion, floods the hypothalamus with signals. In response, your body releases endorphins and oxytocin, the same chemicals that comfort babies and bond lovers. It's emotional alchemy. A study from the University of Minnesota found that crying lowers heart rate and restores balance to the parasympathetic nervous system, the part that calms you after stress. Essentially, tears are emotional reset buttons. They help the mind return to equilibrium when the weight becomes too much to bear. So when people say, I just need a good cry, they're not being dramatic. They're listening to their biology. Why evolution let us cry. Now here's the paradox. Evolution tends to eliminate anything that makes survival harder. Tears blur your vision, make you vulnerable, expose weakness. So why didn't natural selection erase it? Because tears have power, not over predators, but over people. Anthropologists suggest that crying evolved as a nonverbal social cue. When early humans cried, it showed submission, trust, and need, signals that encouraged others to comfort rather than attack. Imagine two prehistoric humans, one angry, one remorseful. Words didn't exist yet, but tears, glistening eyes, trembling voice conveyed peace. It stopped fights before they started. Crying built community, and community built survival. We didn't outfight our predators, we out-empathized them. So maybe crying didn't survive despite evolution. Maybe it's one of its greatest masterpieces. When men stopped crying, for most of history, tears weren't taboo. Ancient warriors cried. Kings wept openly. Samurai, Vikings, even medieval knights saw crying as an honorable act of devotion or grief. Then something changed. During the Enlightenment and early industrial eras, Stoicism became a symbol of control. Emotions were seen as weakness, especially in men. Society began dividing tears into acceptable and shameful. But the irony? Suppression makes the emotion stronger. Clinical psychologists have found that those who habitually hold back tears experience higher blood pressure, muscle tension, and emotional fatigue. Bottled up emotion doesn't disappear. It waits, building pressure until it erupts in anger, breakdowns, or illness. Crying isn't a failure of control. It's the body's way of preventing emotional collapse. When we cry together, we often think of crying as solitary, like a private breakdown behind closed doors. But some of the most powerful moments of collective human emotion are shared tears. When nations mourn a tragedy, when fans cry at concerts, when strangers embrace during disaster, that shared vulnerability creates connection that words can't. Sociologists call it emotional contagion, the phenomenon where one person's tears trigger another's empathy. It's an ancient bonding mechanism. MRI scans reveal that witnessing someone cry activates the same neural circuits as experiencing pain yourself. Our brains mirror their suffering. In that instant, we stop being individuals. We become a shared heartbeat. It's why crowds at funerals, protests, or even movie theaters can collectively sob, because tears remind us we're not alone in what we feel. The strange world of tears. Throughout history, humans have ritualized crying. In ancient Egypt, mourners hired professional weepers whose wails helped release the community's grief. Romans kept tear jars, collecting droplets from their cheeks as tributes to the dead. In Victorian England, women were praised for emotional tears, while men were punished for them. In Japan, there's even an annual competition called Rui Katsu, literally cease tear-seeking, where strangers gather to cry together and feel relief. It turns out we never outgrow the need to weep. We just hide it in more sophisticated ways. From funerals to films, from heartbreaks to weddings, crying is humanity's shared punctuation mark. It says, "This matters," when we cry alone. Not all tears are public. Some are born in silence, the kind that fall at night when no one's watching. Psychologists call this intrapersonal crying, the tears we shed not to be seen, but to be understood by ourselves. Those moments of solitude, after loss, after heartbreak, after exhaustion, serve a profound psychological function. They allow emotional processing. They transform chaos into clarity. After crying, the brain's prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning and reflection, becomes more active. That's why after a breakdown, people often make big decisions or feel renewed perspective. Tears can be the bridge between confusion and acceptance. They don't just show emotion, they move it. When we cry from joy. But crying isn't all sadness. Sometimes joy overwhelms us so much that it looks exactly like grief. Neuroscientists call this dimorphous expression, when opposite emotions trigger the same response. When something is too beautiful, a reunion, a wedding, a newborn's cry, our brains overflow. The same neural pathways that handle sadness activate from joy. In that moment, tears become a pressure valve, preventing emotional overload. It's the body's way of saying, this is too much. Even happiness has limits. That's why people sob at graduations, at concerts, at the birth of a child. The line between pain and joy is thinner than we think. Maybe tears exist to remind us that all strong emotions, love, loss, grief, gratitude, are born from the same human core. When tears heal, therapists often say crying is a release. But what's really happening when we cry through pain? During emotional crying, the vagus nerve, a crucial link between brain and body, activates, sending calming signals through the heart, lungs, and digestive system. Your breath slows, your body temperature drops, your mind begins to regulate. It's as if crying resets your entire emotional operating system. Studies have shown that people who allow themselves to cry during trauma recovery report lower anxiety and faster emotional healing. In some forms of therapy, the first cry is seen as a breakthrough. The moment someone stops analyzing their pain and starts feeling it. Because what we feel, we can finally heal. The cost of not crying. But what happens when the tears never come? Chronic emotional suppression has a price. It can lead to what's called alexithymia, an emotional numbness where people struggle to identify or express what they feel. For trauma survivors, this can become a survival mechanism. The mind shuts down emotional expression to avoid pain. But in doing so, it also blocks joy, love, and empathy. When they finally begin to cry again, it's not weakness, it's rebirth. It's proof that their emotional circuitry is reconnecting. In psychology, tears are often a sign not of breaking down, but of breaking through. The mystery of tears and art. Why do we cry at movies, music, or stories we know aren't real? Because the brain doesn't fully distinguish between witnessed and experienced emotion. When we see a character grieve or hear a melody swell, mirror neurons simulate that feeling inside us. We cry, not because the story is real, but because the emotion is. That's why even the same song, heard at different times in our life, can bring tears for entirely new reasons. Art doesn't make us cry because it manipulates us. It makes us cry because it reminds us what it means to feel. The future of tears. As artificial intelligence learns to mimic emotion, scientists are exploring whether machines could ever cry. But here's the question. If a robot sheds liquid from its eyes, is it crying or just leaking? Crying isn't about the act itself. It's about the meaning behind it. It's about vulnerability, connection, empathy, and those aren't things machines can fake. Perhaps that's why tears are one of the last frontiers of true humanity, something no algorithm can replicate. They remind us that to feel deeply is not a flaw, but the essence of being human. The final tear. Every tear tells a story. The tear that rolls down a child's cheek during their first heartbreak. The tear shed at a funeral when words fail. The tear of laughter when life's absurdities become too much. The tear of joy when we realize we survived. Tears are proof of life, not weakness, but evidence that our hearts still work. We cry when we're overwhelmed, yes, but also when we care deeply. Crying isn't the opposite of strength, it's the expression of it. Because to cry is to feel, and to feel is to be human. If this video made you think differently about something as simple and as sacred as a tear, then you already understand what the Mind Metrics is about, exploring the invisible mechanics of what makes us human. If you enjoyed this exploration, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive into the mind, body, and mysteries of existence. And remember, crying isn't something to hide. It's a signal, a language, and a healing force that's been with humanity since the very first breath. So the next time a tear falls, don't wipe it away in shame. Let it fall. It's your body's way of saying you're alive, you still feel, you still care. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.